Coming up on this Friday edition of Newsline at Noon, global oil prices plunged to an over 4-year low after OPEC members refused to cut oil production. Experts forecast prices will fall even further. With Korean shoppers getting ready to snap up some online bargains on this Black Friday, local retailers are offering hefty discounts to entice people away from the online malls. Plus, traditional Korean music performed by farmers, Nongak, becomes Korea's latest entry onto UNESCO's Intangible Cultural Heritage list. These stories and more on Newsline at Noon.
It's noon Friday, November 28th here in Korea. Thanks for tuning in. Live from Seoul, I'm Eoh Jin-joo.
It's very good to have you with us. I'm Mark Broome. And let's start with news that global crude oil prices have plunged to a low not seen since the middle of 2010.
Right, the crash in oil prices comes after members of OPEC decided to keep pumping 30 million barrels of oil a day, despite calls from various circles for them to tighten up the taps. Connie Lee tells us more.
Oil prices have been on the downward spiral for a while now, but they sunk even further on Thursday after OPEC decided not to cut oil production. During a 6-hour-long meeting in Vienna, the 12 members of the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries decided to maintain their oil output at current levels.
In the interest of restoring market equilibrium, the conference decided to maintain the production level of 30 million barrels a day, as was agreed in December 2011.
After the announcement, Brent crude oil tumbled below $73 a barrel, a low not seen since May 2010. The decision, led by Saudi Arabia, was reached despite calls from less well-off members who favored a production cut to stem the sliding crude prices.
4 years or 4 years and a half, we have a very decent price. So now price decline. That does not mean that we should really, rush and do something. As I said many times to you, that we don't want to panic.
The outcome didn't come as a huge surprise, but it will hurt non-OPEC exporters like Russia, which already faces Western sanctions over its role in the Ukraine crisis. Crude prices have been dropping like a stone this year, losing around 30% of their value since June. This is due to rising shale oil production in the U.S. and slowing economic growth in Asia and Europe. Connie Lee, Arirang News.
Well, the falling price of oil may be a bad thing for non-OPEC exporters, but it is expected to be a good thing for countries like Korea that rely heavily on oil imports. Experts say it could create a virtuous cycle for the Korean economy as drops in prices bring down production costs. Seoul-based Hyundai Research Institute last month forecast for every 10% drop in oil prices, company investments increase by 0.02%, while Korean exports grow by nearly 1.2%. Domestic consumption would also grow by 0.7%. This, the institute says, will eventually lead to a 0.3% increase in the nation's gross domestic product. The Korean economy is showing signs of improving, but picking up a decent head of steam has proved pretty challenging as of now. We're getting more mixed numbers on this Friday. Statistics Korea says the country's output across all industries edged up 0.3% in October compared to the previous month. This is good as it marks a rebound from 2 straight months of decline in August and September. The agency says the rise was driven by the service sector, which saw output rise 0.8% last month from a month earlier. But finance officials say the recovery is very weak, with production in the mining and manufacturing sector during this period falling by more than 1.5% as output in chips and electrical gadgets shrank. Now, projections have been run and numbers have been crunched. Korea's National Pension Fund is forecast to run completely dry in less than 40 years if the current benefit system continues as it is. In its latest report released on Friday, Korea's National Assembly Budget Office says the fund would be exhausted by the year 2053, 7 years earlier than the government's forecast. The office says the pension fund will start paying out more than it's taking in by the year 2038 due to the country's aging population and low birth rate. The amount of money in the fund is forecast to reach its peak in 2023.
Inspired by President Park Geun-hye and Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe's pledge to improve the two countries' bilateral ties at the APEC summit early this month, senior officials from Korea and Japan met on Thursday for some high-level talks in Seoul. However, progress remains painstakingly slow on the issue of Japan's sexual enslavement of Korean women in the early 20th century. Hwang Sang-hee reports.
For the fifth time this year, senior officials from Korea and Japan met to discuss Tokyo's wartime sexual enslavement of Korean women. What's different about Thursday's meeting is that it came after President Park Geun-hye and Prime Minister Shinzo Abe expressed hopes for tangible progress in the high-level talks when they met on the sidelines of the APEC summit. Around 200,000 women, mostly Korean, were forced to serve the Japanese military during the Second World War, and the issue has long been a thorn in their bilateral ties. Seoul has called on Tokyo to take sincere steps to compensate the aging victims, but Japan insists the matter was legally settled through a bilateral treaty in 1965. An official at Seoul's foreign ministry declined to provide details, but noted that positive progress was made at each round of talks. Despite recent controversy over the comfort women issue, the Japanese official reiterated Tokyo's stance about upholding the so-called Kono Statement. Also discussed was the planned trilateral foreign ministers meeting with China. The official expressed skepticism about the 3 top diplomats sitting down within this year, saying it would likely only happen after the December 14th elections in Japan. The two sides will meet again for a 6th meeting in Tokyo next month. Hwang Sang-hee, Arirang News.
Human rights activists in Russia are speaking out against a deportation agreement Moscow recently struck with North Korea. The deal, which was drafted in September, states that Russians or North Koreans without proper documentation will be detained and deported within 30 days if found to be in the country illegally. This still awaits parliamentary approval in Russia, however. But Russian activists called a press conference in Moscow this week and they called for this agreement to be scrapped. They say Russians very rarely, if ever, enter the north illegally, and the deal is a very thinly veiled attempt to repatriate North Koreans trying to escape the oppressive grip of their regime there. North Korean defectors who are sent back to North Korea are routinely subject to torture, imprisonment, and other often worse abuses. The action comedy movie that North Korea labelled an act of war will hit cinema screens across the United States late next month. The final trailer for The Interview is out now, and it gives us a much better idea of how they depicted North Korean leader Kim Jong-un in that film. Our Connie Kim reports.
The final trailer for the first Hollywood film to depict North Korean leader Kim Jong-un is out. The Interview, which centers on a TV talk show host and his producer, who are drafted by the CIA to assassinate the young dictator while in the north to film a show. But the final trailer released this week shows the protagonists, played by actors James Franco and Seth Rogen, having fun with the man they're supposed to kill.
It was a gift to my grandfather from Stalin.
In my country, it's pronounced Stallone.
From hanging out in a tank to bonding over pop songs.
I've never heard this before in my life.
I love Katy Perry.
Really?
As you shoot across the sky.
Through their interactions with Kim's character, Rogen and Franco's characters start having doubts about their mission to kill the young dictator. The movie clearly pokes fun at North Korea's mysterious leader, but the regime isn't in on the joke. They've called it a wanton act of terror and threatened the United States of a merciless response once it's released. And perhaps bowing to the pressure, it's been reported that a scene in which Kim is assassinated in the comedy ended up on the editing room floor. Regardless, it remains to be seen how Pyongyang reacts to its leader being depicted as the butt of the joke. Connie Kim, Arirang News.
A form of traditional Korean farm music and dance ritual known as Nongak has been inscribed on UNESCO's list of Intangible Cultural Heritage. And with this inscription, South Korea now has a total of 17 cultural assets on this list. Now Kim Ji-yeon reports.
A rush of adrenaline, and then comes a calmness one feels when encountering Nongak, a traditional Korean music from the early 1900s. Coined as farm music, Nongak was chanted by farmers while working long, back-breaking hours in the field to help them overcome the difficulty of agricultural life. The music is enjoyed today by many Koreans for its upbeat rhythm and performance, and now it's officially recognized by UNESCO as one of the world's intangible cultural heritage. Nongak is Korea's 17th item on the UNESCO list, alongside the country's folk song Arirang and the making and sharing of kimchi known as kimjang.
Nongak is a creative art form. The performers and the audience are united as they're invited to join along in the performance's rhythmic changes.
The recognition of Nongak as a UNESCO cultural heritage is expected to become a catalyst in the move to preserve the art form, to pass it down to generations.
This will be a great motivation to come up with creative and systematic ways to preserve and develop our rich cultural asset.
Also added to the UNESCO list this year is North Korea's version of the folk song Arirang, alongside South Korea's version of the song, which was added back in 2012. Kim Ji-yeon, Arirang News.
Now, today is Black Friday, and it's the day when Americans rush to stores to be first in line to load up on the best holiday deals.
Yes, and this shopping madness has quickly caught on in Korea as well, because let's be honest, who doesn't like a deal, especially
right.
you, Jin-joo. And some of the discounts are huge. So to tell us more, our very own Kim Min-ji joins us live in the studio. Hi, Min-ji.
Hi, guys.
So, Min-ji, tell us a little bit more about this Black Friday and why this American holiday tradition is becoming a bigger deal here in Korea.
Yep, so this Black Friday is actually the day immediately following Thanksgiving in the U.S., which falls on the fourth Thursday of November. We can consider this day as a non-official start of the official holiday season. So this is a day when retailers expect to turn a profit or go in the black after being in the red almost all year, hence the name Black Friday. And as for why this day is becoming a bigger deal for Koreans, let's take a look.
Winter sales in Korea are up and running, but they came a couple of days early this year. Why? Because the American shopping day known as Black Friday, which falls on November 28th this year, has also ignited a shopping extravaganza in Korea. Afraid of losing out on potential customers during the spree, local retailers are now offering their own Black Friday deals in hopes that customers will shop till they drop.
Black Friday now represents a big shopping opportunity, not only in the US and Europe, but in Korea as well. We hope our sales promotions, in particular, will help us tap into the large group of shoppers that prefer to make direct purchases online.
This department store has taken it a step further, opening a specialty shop that sells popular overseas brands not usually available in Korea.
Products sold here can also be found on overseas online shopping malls. Although the prices run about 30% higher, when you consider import duties or delivery charges, the difference basically cancels out. Plus, there's the added benefit of being able to try out products before you buy them.
It also offers after-sales services and eliminates the risks of shipments getting lost in the mail. But what spurred the shopping craze in the first place? A surge in Koreans opting to make direct purchases through overseas sites.
On Black Friday, the discounts are huge and there are a wide variety of products. I usually make direct purchases about once a week, but this time I'm waiting.
Data shows that direct purchases made from Korea last year topped $1 billion, and the total is expected to nearly double this year. As more people turn to the internet to buy a wide variety of foreign goods, events like Black Friday are becoming more global. But for retailers, it means more work as they compete to keep customers and gain new ones in an arena that has no borders and continues to expand.
Well, Minji, it's interesting how the dynamics are changing, really, now in the day and age of the internet and all these deals going on. But how much of a big deal, discount-wise, could Koreans get if they buy things from these foreign, overseas-based online malls?
Well, they can get some big discounts. Like, for instance, if you buy a local brand 65-inch TV on Amazon, you can save about $600, even with import duties and delivery charges included. Also, you can save almost $200 when you buy a tablet PC through direct purchasing rather than buying at a department store.
Right. So more people in Korea are turning to direct purchases, but what could be some of the risks of this new shopping trend? If I'm understanding it correctly, you have to designate an address in the U.S. or buy it through a company that specializes in this substitute purchasing.
Yes, Jin-joo, lower prices come with higher risks. For one, shipments could take quite a long time to arrive, even up to a month. So if you're looking to get something quickly, direct purchasing is probably not going to be your best choice. There's also that risk of your shopping goodies getting lost or damaged, or you might even get the wrong product. When that happens, it's going to be much complicated to send back the wrong product and get a refund. So experts do advise you to read over the terms and conditions thoroughly before making purchases.
Yes, lots of common sense advice there, Minji, and thanks ever so much for your reporting, and have a fabulous Black Friday.
Thank you, sure thing.
Let's now take a look at some of the other global headlines we're following this hour with our Eunice Kim, who's standing by at the news center.
Eunice, Mexico's president has pledged to overhaul his country's police force that's seen by many as rotten to the core, really, as there is also growing anger over the disappearance of dozens of student teachers.
That's right, Mark. Back in September, 43 college students training to become teachers were abducted, and there is still no sign of them. The government had said that local police handed them to a drug gang, which apparently killed them and burned their bodies. Now, under mounting pressure to rein in the country's widespread corruption, Mexico's President Enrique Peña Nieto told government leaders that he'll submit an initiative for constitutional reform on Monday that would pave the way for some 1,800 municipal police forces to be taken over by state agencies. He said he'd start with the country's most violent states, including Guerrero, where those students had vanished on September 26th after being attacked by Iguala police. He said the plan would also remove from power those authorities who are found to be working with organized crime. Hours before that announcement, 11 partially burned bodies were found an hour's drive from where the students went missing. It is unclear yet, though, whether the two incidents are related. Protests and unrest sparked by the Michael Brown case has been put to at least a temporary pause with the Thanksgiving holiday in the U.S. In Ferguson, police said only 2 people were arrested Wednesday night, in marked contrast to the over 100 detained in the first 2 nights of angry protests. Instead, residents gathered for turkey giveaways and church services where a pastor consoled the heartbroken Midwestern community and prayed for the families of Michael Brown and Officer Darren Wilson. This as another fatal police shooting came to light. Police in Cleveland released a security video on request of family that showed Saturday's events leading up to a black 12-year-old boy, Tamir Rice, being shot by police officers. A 911 dispatcher apparently had not relayed the caller's report that he did not believe the boy was waving a real gun. In Japan, a volcano eruption has triggered flight cancellations in Kyushu's Kumamoto airport as authorities issued a warning to nearby residents. It was the first time in 19 years that Mount Aso had erupted. It was still spewing smoke and volcanic ash over Kyushu Island on Thursday after first erupting on Tuesday, shooting rocks as high as 200 meters. Though the activity did not pose an imminent danger, the regional office did urge people living around that volcano to remain on high alert.
Stay up to date on the latest news out of Korea, connecting to our team of reporters about the issues that matter to Korea. On air, on your mobile, online. Find out more about Korea on Newsline at Noon with Mark Broome and Eoh Jin-joo.
I'm Eoh Jin-joo.
Market researcher, strategy analytics, said Thursday that LG Electronics.
Now, there's a significant shift in attitude toward marriage underway in Korea these days. More and more Koreans are saying there's no real need to tie the knot. New data shows more than 4 out of 10 Koreans don't consider marriage something a person has to do. Just 6 years ago, less than a third of Koreans had the same view. The survey conducted by Statistics Korea also found that 47% of Koreans would be willing to live with their boyfriend or girlfriend, something that would have been looked down upon just a couple of decades ago. 3/4 of respondents also said the process of getting hitched is just too stressful, not to mention the financial expense of a nice wedding ceremony. Students have to work hard, but a lot of them like to play hard as well. But which city is the best for students to live in? Well, according to British-based QS World University Rankings, Paris is the #1 place to be for students, followed by Melbourne and London, respectively. Seoul ranked pretty high as well, coming in as the 10th most student-friendly city. The ranking is reached based on a number of factors such as quality of living, affordability, and student mix. QS called Seoul one of its most exciting study destinations. It also pointed out that the Korean capital is a 24/7 city where life is rarely dull, and highlighted Seoul's many cultural, natural, and even spiritual attractions.
Bug burgers and stir-fried insects. These could be the kind of food we have to tuck into in the future. Now, insects have long been a key part of menus in several corners of the world, but with worries about potential food shortages in the future, the Korean government wants to promote the edible insect market here as well. For more on this underexplored source of nutrition for all of us, Kwon So-ah reports.
Protein blocks made of cockroaches. This horrifying scene from the hit Korean movie Snowpiercer is the stuff of Hollywood, but may not be far from reality in the near future. From silkworms and locusts to darkling beetles and the kolb, Korea's food ministry now recognizes 4 insects as being edible. The government is serious about the market. It says bugs could become our main source of food in the future due to predicted food shortages brought on by a growing population. It expects the economic value of insects used for food and medicine to reach over $63 million next year. Insects aren't only abundant in number, but nutritious and especially high in protein. They are also more efficient. While 100 kilograms of food for a cow will produce 6.5 kilograms of meat for the dinner plate, the same amount fed to insects produces 54 kilograms of food for consumption.
The real question is, would people really want to eat these insects on a daily basis? Bug burgers like this one might be the answer to making the thought a little more appetizing.
This is made of insects? I didn't know that. It tastes good.
At this exhibition, where insect dishes are on display and available for tasting, experts say it's important to change people's perception of insects from yucky to yummy. But it's not the only challenge.
Insects contain toxins, and it hasn't been closely examined yet if they are harmful to humans. Korea's Ministry of Food and Drug Safety is very strict with inspections.
a sterilizing process to make them safe, meaning more production facilities are needed. But industry watchers say it's worth the investment, and by promoting consumer-friendly menus, it might not be too long before insects become a staple on the dinner table. Kwon So-ah, Arirang News.
It's a wet day today. It started raining this morning here in Seoul and it's spreading to the whole peninsula. And the upper regions will receive up to 40 millimeters of precipitation, while the rest will see somewhere between 5 and 20. And the rain has been picking up with each passing hour, and it will do so throughout the day before it lets up later in the evening. And unlike the mild morning we had, the afternoon highs are expected to be a few notches lower than yesterday, but still above the averages, as the daytime high here in Seoul and Daegu will rise to 11, while Gwangju and Busan top out at 14 and 17 later in the day. And as for the other regions, Jeju Island will remain mild, getting up to 20, while Daejeon and Dokdo see highs of 11 and 12. Now, mild temperatures will persist throughout the weekend, but if you plan to be outdoors, Saturday should be a better day as we have rain in the picture on Sunday. Then next week will kick off the first week of December under a very cold temperatures with lows plunging to freezing side. Well, that's all for me this week. Back to you, Mark and Jin-joo in the studio.
Thank you, Chien, for the weather. And that brings us to the end of our Friday edition of Newsline at Noon.
Yes, and please join us again at the same time, noon, Korea time, next Monday. Have a fabulous weekend. Goodbye.